Hello everyone, today we're talking about the most important travel tips of 2025. The very first one is passports. If you're traveling internationally, make sure you bring your passports with you. Make sure they're up to date. That gets a lot of people hung up. You'll see some good tickets online, and you're just like, oh man, I'll go buy those tickets. Be super cheap, especially in the wintertime, and you'll book everything out, and you realize you'll go to your safe or wherever you keep your passport and it's out of date or it's almost out of date, and it's gonna be a problem. Then you have to either get an emergency passport. At that point in time, try to get your money back for your travel. It's gonna ruin your whole trip. Always be aware of that situation. So many people get hung up on that. So many people have issues with that for sure. The next one is the planning. Okay, so let's give it for instance here. You want to go on a trip. You have no idea how to do that. What do most people do? They do the most wrongest thing you could possibly do and go hire a trip advisor or travel advisor, and they're going to pay them a premium to work their trip out, right? You're never going to get a good price that way. You're always going to pay over double for stuff. You don't really get what you want. You have to take, you see this so much, you have to take your own trip in your own hands. A really good site like Expedia, we're not affiliated with them, but we do use those guys all the time. You could use other sites like TripAdvisor. Expedia, by far, from our experience, has the best deals on travel because you could book a flight, hotel, and car. And in some instances, they almost give you the hotel and car along with the package for the flight if you do it correctly. And if it's booked all together through Expedia, a lot of times your baggage follows along. You don't have to go get your bag at every stop. Expedia has an app on your phone that gives you live updates if anything's changed. They'll also send you alerts if you have gate changes, if you have any kind of flight changes, flight cancellations, and also tell you what to do next. You can also find diagrams of the airports on that. You can look live feed what's going on. You kind of have to have that anymore these days. Also, you can also get your tickets on Expedia and scan them to go through the line. There's so much to it. It is not the 1990s, the 1980s. You don't have to do everything manually anymore. All you have to do is get your butt to the next gate on time, and there'll be guidance on Expedia for that, or maps, or you could even Google that. You could even get a Google map walking guidance to that. You can't mess it up as long as you're smart enough to use your device in your hand. If you don't use a smartphone, I'm sure somebody traveling with you does, right? And that's gonna make it a lot easier. So packing is another one of these things you have to watch out for. A lot of people tend to overpack or even underpack. How many times have you traveled? People watching this probably have traveled before. You're watching this video, and you leave your house and you're getting ready to board the plane, and you think, "Oh crap, I forgot something," and it might be something very important, right? Every time we go somewhere, I always joke. I say, "Well, got my phone, got my wallet. Everything else don't matter, right? Everything else we can buy on the way." Especially have medications. That's one thing you cannot buy on the way, and don't get caught up in that. Any medications also need to go into your carry-on bag or your backpack or purse that stays on your person. Do not check those. You cannot trust the airlines not to lose your bag. That brings us to the next thing. In my opinion, at this point in time, you need to always use the Apple AirTag or some similar device to put in your check luggage. That way, once it leaves your vision, you know where it's at every step of the way. You can follow it live feed on your phone. What's Apple AirTag these days? Less than $30? That's probably worth it, right? You probably got a lot more than $30 of the stuff in your check bag. Especially you're bringing presents, you're bringing actual items. You may have expensive clothes, and the airport's gonna say, "We don't know where your bag's at." And you can hold your phone up and say, "Well, I know exactly where it's at." So get your phone out and call them up, and let's get this figured out. That's some tremendous leverage when you're traveling to have that option to know where your bag's at all time. You got some wild, rowdy kids stick one on them too. Whatever is important to you, you don't want to lose in crowded airports. Put an air tag on it. You could track those things. That works very, very, very good. The next one is, we went over this a couple times in the last videos, is TSA PreCheck global entry. We got our global entry cards. Is it easy to get? No. Is it a pain in the butt? Yes. You got to fill out a form online. If you already have your passport, it makes it slightly easier, maybe. You have to go in manually for an interview. Usually it's close to an airport. You have to Google it and see where your global entry or TSA PreCheck screenings are. You got to make an appointment. For us, the airport's hours away, right? I go drive there just for that and do all that. However, that may save your butt more than once, just in one trip. Instead of standing in a line with 1,000 people in it, there's a line off to the side with virtually nobody in it. You can just walk right through. You're pre-screened. That means you probably don't take your shoes off. They're not going to look in your baggage much. You're just going to basically walk right through. Now, connecting flights, international connecting flights, that makes a difference. How many times have you flown in the United States back from somewhere or even out, and you have to be at your plane? Let's say you got a 30-minute delay. You get to the customs line, and there's 1,000 people standing in front of you. That's common. We've been there. That's why we got the global entry passes, right? And that's almost made us miss connecting flights several times. And finally, I said, that's enough. We were standing in the Bahamas, and I was watching people go through a line to the side, just walking around the whole line and going right through. I said, what's that? And the guy said, global entry and TSA PreCheck. I said, okay. He gave us a 10-second rundown how to get it. We got back here. It took months to get that. Like, the website's wonky, everything's wonky, everything's a pain in the butt. It's government stuff, so you got to expect it's going to be wonky, it's going to be upside down. That also gives you another form of ID when you have that, right? A government verified form ID. And so if you are in another country and you lose your passport, that's just one more thing to help you show who you are. It may make it easier to get a new passport and things like that, right? Or if you, let's say in some states you get pulled over, you don't have a driver's license. They take your driver's license when you get pulled over and get a ticket. They just take it out of your hand and take it with them. At least now you have another legit form of ID to keep on you, right? Anyhow, that's an endless story on global entry, TSA PreCheck for sure. The next one is credit cards or taking cash out, traveling internationally. Here's my opinion from traveling. You always need to have access to a lot of money. Now, if that means you have a credit card with you with a couple more $1,000 limit than you plan to spend on that trip, that's good enough, right? Once you go international, can you go cash US currency in and get that country's currency and use it? You can, especially in Europe. That's not really what they want. They want Apple Pay. They want Google Pay. When we were in London, you almost couldn't use a debit card. You could use basically no cash. Everybody wants the tap to pay. Apple Pay was the biggest thing. Even to ride the tube. You cannot ride the tube in London without Apple Pay or Google Pay. Now, you might be able to buy a pre-done card where you go somewhere and buy a pre-done pass with cash, maybe. There's nobody taking cash to ride any of the Euro-Rail stuff or any of that stuff. And so that's a big thing. You know, your debit card before you leave, if you're going to use your debit card or a credit card before you leave, call the number on the back of the card, tell them you're leaving the country, just so they don't stop your card. That could really disrupt you severely, especially if it's on the weekend. You cannot call them or get through so they could turn your card back on. That could run you out of money. That could run you into a big, big, big issue. Absolutely, for sure. Let me see here. So some countries, some smaller countries require different health regulations. When you go to places like Vietnam, places like certain countries require you to have like a dengue flu shot, like different things to not catch those things in those countries, right? Check into all of that. And as I said before, always bring your medications in your carry-on or your backpack, your purse right next to your side. Never, ever, ever check those. And the last one we already talked about was money. We already jumped the gun, already talked about that. There is not really much exchanging money, cash money, to go use cash money somewhere. If you're in the middle of nowhere trying to buy stuff, maybe, but I don't know of any shops off the top of my head that takes cash only, will not take a card. If you do run into that, I'm sure there's an ATM or some other way around that. You could get that for that. But you got to watch out too. Exchanging money, they're going to charge you a rate for that. They're going to charge you money to exchange your money for their money. And so also be aware of that. But that's it. These are some pretty simple tips, some pretty crucial tips when you're traveling, not to miss these things. This could cost you your trip or a lot worse heartache on your trip. You get caught out with not the right paperwork, trying to go somewhere, or with no money. It's going to be a big, big issue. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see y'all later.